All right, we're live. So, welcome to the Leap podcast dedicated to helping people get inspired to change careers and become software developers. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is Jun Jie, but I usually call him JJ. And he is a successful software developer who I would say it's very experienced in the tech career field. So, JJ will be sharing his story
Thanks.
and offering valuable advice for those looking to transition to the tech field. So, if you're considering a career change and are interested in becoming a software developer, this is the episode for you. So, join us as we discuss the challenges and tools and resources that JJ have used to become successful in this exciting and rewarding field. So, thank you so much, JJ, for joining us in this podcast.
Oh, thank you for the fantastic introduction.
Yes, totally
I
not
loved it.
scripted. Anyway, so first question, JJ. So I think you have a very long career in the tech field, right? But let's
Yeah.
get back to the basics. What inspired you to actually join in the tech field?
I joined the tech field because I wanted to build stuff like electronics, microelectronics, and like microcontrollers. So, and then I realized that I need programming to program it. And then I started doing more and more programming until I decided that programming is more fun than electronics. So
Right. So
that's how I
what
got started.
can you describe what do you mean by
So
microcontrollers?
microcontrollers is like your Arduinos, you've heard of it, your Raspberry
Nope.
Pis. It's basically very, very small mini computers that you can program to do basic electronic things. Like for example, I can use microcontrollers to create like a way to automatically on and off my fan depending on the current room temperature, to on and off my house light based on whether there's movement. So microcontroller is the things that allow you to do these kind of things. You can also find microcontrollers in your remote control at home. You can find it in like your smart switches. Um, Basically, it powers a lot of like the electronic stuff in your house that is not as powerful as your iPhone, your Macs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So the main inspiration to why you joined the tech field is because you were experimenting or actually playing around with the engineering side, where it's through microcontrollers like mini computers that senses temperatures and it can convert to maybe faster fan speed. And then you're also playing around with software. So you decided
Right.
that software is much more fun than physical electronics. Why is that so?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that it is more fun. I feel like the main reason why I chose software over electronics or what we call like electronics engineering and stuff is simply because that software is a lot more accessible. I just need me, my computer and stuff. I don't have to like buy electronic components. I don't have to go and tinker around. It's easier to debug software. It's just a lot easier to experiment with, and when you are at the stage of like building things, experimenting, it is very rewarding to see what you're building, um, to see it come to life or like be able to like use your interact with it as quickly as you can and make changes to it very quickly. Whereas I feel like although it is very fun to like do electronics and stuff, it is still a bit um, the cycle of iteration is just not as quick, and that is why like I thought like software engineering is more interesting, and that's why I stuck with it for this long. Yeah.
Right. So I guess the reason is that it's easy to actually do software because you just need a laptop, internet. That's about it, right? And
Yep.
then you
Yep.
are also able to visually see the results of what you've done, right? Rather
Exactly.
than
Exactly.
microcontrollers where you have to do a lot of wiring and connecting
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So when you're learning tech, right, what was like the biggest challenge that you faced throughout the years as you were, becoming better in tech?
Okay. So I mean, obviously, there's like quite a few challenges, but I think it breaks down by the year that you are in tech in. So like what I mean by like it's like when at the start when you first join tech, halfway through, and like right now. So I think at the very beginning, the most difficult thing is just tech itself. Like programming is not exactly very easy, right? So that was the hardest part. It's just like learning curve. And when I started out programming, I started out so I thought to myself, and I heard some advice from others that like you have to choose the hardest programming language to start at, so that once you overcome the learning curve, everything else is gonna be easy. So between at that time I had a choice between Python, Java, and C++. And I was like, okay, let's go with the hardest one, go big or go home. So I started with C++, and it was honestly not very easy at all. It was pretty difficult, and the learning curve was huge. Right? So that was the biggest thing that I struggled with at the start. It's just the learning curve, um, and like get learning enough so that I can uh, know how to build things instead of getting stuck at every single step. So it's more like I need to learn enough and pass that huge learning curve to the point where like I feel comfortable enough that I can like write enough code. Let's say maybe like I can write 100 lines of code without doing a single googling, right? So like once you get to that point, it gets a lot easier. But at the very beginning, the hardest thing is just the learning curve. Yeah.
Right.
And
So
maybe
yeah.
like halfway through, I think the biggest thing for me, when I say halfway through, is like maybe a few years in, like 2 3 years in. The hardest thing is just thinking like, if I'm going to do this as my career, am I able to find a job, right? Because like, why would someone hire me over someone else, right? Like, what do I bring to the table that is so much better? So that was the struggle then. It was a mix of like imposter syndrome and like being worried about career, right? So there's that. And then finally today, I think the biggest struggle that I have today is just um, thinking about like promotion. Like, how do I get to the next level? Now that I can find jobs, and I can work, it's just how do I get to the next level that I see myself in my career? Yeah.
Right. So I think you summarized nicely in three parts, right? I would
Yep.
say the beginner and the intermediate, and then the last part is where you want to get more advanced into your
Right.
career, right? So
Yep.
I think a lot of people who are listening are actually people who wants to transition into tech, right? Before we get into that of helping people transition into tech, right? Maybe you can share on the different offers that you have gotten yourself and what qualifications you have right now that made you get this kind of qualifications. I mean, get you this kind of offers.
Okay. So, I mean, let's think about like qualification first. So I wasn't really a great student. Um, like most of my teachers would describe me, I wasn't exactly a great student. I was an average C, maybe sometimes B student. And I went to Polytechnic in Singapore. So it's kind of like technical training school slash vocation training school. And then I did this diploma in computer engineering. So it sounds like it was like programming and stuff, but computer engineering is it's a bit less like computer science. So I think most people hear computer science and they kind of know it. So I feel like computer science is much more concept heavy, much more what you think about like traditional like programming when you go to school. Whereas computer engineering is, you do learn programming and stuff, but the programming is a lot more focused on electronics. So it's exactly what I described just now on like programming your microcontrollers, learning how do I build a remote control, how do I write software for remote control that allows me to run the remote controller on the same battery for 2 years straight without dying, right? Or like how do I write code for a refrigerator that cannot stop running 24/7 for its entire life of the refrigerator, right? So those are like the type of programming that we learn, and the type of concepts that we learn. It's a lot more like electronic and hardware based, rather than pure software. So that's that. So that's my qualification. And I graduated okay. I graduated as like a B student, more exactly very good. Um, so yeah, so at that point, I wasn't able to find much jobs and stuff. So I told myself that like, um, why don't I try a different approach? Because at that point, I couldn't really get into any university, and back in the days lah, the perception is that unless you have a university degree, it's quite hard to find like a job, or like quite hard to find like a software engineering job at a relatively good starting pay, right? So what I told myself is like, okay, why don't I take a different strategy? So my strategy is that I need to do something so that I am better than all my peers who went to university. And how do I do that? So I always tell people when they ask me this is you need to do the ABCs of coding. ABCs of coding stands for always be coding. So my strategy is very simple. I just coded every single day for almost 5 years straight. And how do I track it is through GitHub commits, right? So GitHub contribution graph is public. Everyone can see it. They can see all my projects. All my projects are open source. So I basically just coded every single day, committed to my own open source repos every single day for 5 years straight. And that is so-called my resume in a sense. So most of the time, people who offer me jobs and stuff find me through my GitHub profile, either because they found like a project that I worked on, or they just browse through my profile. And most of the time, when they see that I've been coding for so many years, they just assume that it's a bit hard to fake that amount of coding that you do when it's so many years and it's so public. So most of the time, I just get offers without much of a technical interview or whatnot. Yeah.
Right. So basically, your qualification is not really kind of, I mean, it's kind of related to computer science or software development, but that isn't enough because it is a diploma level. And
Yep.
a lot of times people think we need the degree to become a software developer or get
Right.
a high paying job, right?
Yep.
So what you did was the ABCs of coding, which is always be coding. And
Yep.
then how you track it is literally every single day of your life, you put it in this website called GitHub. So for those who don't know what GitHub is, it's basically a way for you to, I would summarize it as a way for you to back up your projects and your different changes in your projects. And usually there is like a tracker in a sense that it tracks how many changes you put inside the database. And if you do it every single day for 5 years, I personally think is very impressive. and and I would agree to other people who offer you offers without any or not much technical interviews is that it's very hard to fake that kind of commitment, right?
Yep.
And I
Yep.
don't think a lot of people have that kind of commitment, right? So
Yep.
yes, I do agree that that is such a huge thing for many people, which is GitHub contributions.
Yep.
And the offers that you get, can you share on like the numbers, what they are willing to pay you?
So I think like I do have offers over 120K annum salary and kind of in that range. But it depends on the specific role. There are different companies, different compensation packages, and I think the highest one that I've gotten is from AWS. It's a it's a it's a big tech company, as most of you have heard AWS.
Amazon Web Service.
Yes.
For
So
those who don't
they,
know
they
what's
do
AWS.
offer a very they do offer a very good compensation package, especially with their stock compensation and everything. So that was like 180K. But yeah, that's a US based rule. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
So your offers ranges from 110 to 100, what, 80, 160,
Yeah.
right? Around
You
there,
can
right?
see that. Yeah.
With just a diploma
Yep.
and 5 years of GitHub contributions. Or
Yeah.
contributions basically saved changes in your
Yes.
GitHub. So
Yes.
I think a lot of people might think that you need to go through a degree or go through a boot camp, and JJ just do it with pure will and addiction to coding, I would say.
Yes, yes.
That's
It's truly,
literally
I realize that like if I can't beat other people at like how smart I am or how good of a student I am, I can at the very least I know for a fact that I can beat them by how obsessed I am with doing this. Because to me it's just like it's kind of like if you go to the gym and then you ask a very like big and buff guy like what's your secret, right? Most of the time they just tell you like I just do this every single day, for 20 years straight and I get this big. So I feel like I do the same thing. I'm just so obsessed with it. And like if I track my daily code time through our like a software, on average I hit like 10 to 12 hours every single day coding. And right now after 5 years, it's like a daily thing for me. It's like you remember to brush your teeth every day, you remember to sleep every day, and yeah.
Right. So I guess obsessed people, I would say it's a rare find because it's literally their life, right? And
Yep.
people who hit what they really want to do in their life, it's also a rare find as well, right? But I believe that there are people who, have other priorities in life as well, right?
Right.
Whether,
Right.
they have kids, family, or they have hobbies or other things that they want to do. So what is then like one thing that can help someone who is thinking to transition career and not really make it an obsession, but in a sense like
Right.
enough for them to break in into the tech sector?
I agree. I agree. Like as you said, most people are not obsessed with this. Most of them just want to have a good job, or they just want to transition to this career, and it's perfectly understandable that they're not obsessed or they don't want to be obsessed. So, but when I talk about being obsessed, I know I use the word or like the the fact that I'm obsessed to like drive my growth, but more than being obsessed, I think the main thing that drove my growth lah is the consistency, right? So if you treat it in a different sense, you can say that the reason why I succeeded is not because I'm obsessed, but it's because I'm consistent for 5 years straight, right? So I think even if you are, let's say you have other commitments, you are super busy every single day, or you have like you're busy with other stuff, whatever. I think the most important thing is just to be consistent. As hard as it is, I'm not saying that you have to be like 10 to 12 hours consistent every single day, but just being consistently coding and just working on it 1 hour every single day is gonna push you much more than if you just work once a week on one project for 10 hours straight, right? So like being consistent really helps a lot. The main reason is also kind of like it constantly is in your mind every single day. It stays fresh in your mind. So it's not like you are restarting the whole process again once a week. So that's one thing, being consistent. The second thing is that uh, for me, the reason why I think it worked out well is not just being consistent and being obsessed, but also being okay with an extended timeline. Meaning that a lot of times people feel like, oh, I've been coding every single day for 2 weeks. Why am I not seeing significant progress? Right? And I can tell you that for most of the time, right, even now, every time I code every single day for 2 weeks, I feel like, wow, how come the last 2 weeks, I did so many like stupid mistakes. Like, am I getting worse or what? But when I zoom out and I see it in the like timeline of like months and even years, it's huge growth, right? So I think it's like, yes, you need to be consistent, but also be consistent for long enough period of time. If you're just consistent for 1 week or consistent for 1 month, you're not gonna make that much progress. Although it will definitely help, right? Like if you want to go to the gym for consistently for 1 month, it will help you, but you won't see life changing results. Most of the time, you need to be doing it for like many months, even years, right? And truth be told, I've only really started seeing significant growth in myself after I've been consistently working on myself and growing for 6 months to 1 year. And past the 1 year mark is when I really start to see my growth uh, going up a lot. And like the first 6 months to 1 year is really just I just needed to like grind it out and I just stay consistent and not give up, to be honest. Yeah.
Right. So I guess like there's 3 points, right? First is consistent. Second is I would say expectations. So manage your
Right.
expectations, right? Don't
Yep.
expect you to, become a full-fledged developer in 2 weeks or even 1 month. And then
Yep.
third is also to not give up because earlier you said that learning to program is actually a high learning curve, meaning it's actually harder than it seems. So
Yep.
I do believe, and if we've talked before this podcast has started, that you actually help someone transition career, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you had a friend who has no coding experience and you helped this friend of yours to actually transition career and he actually got a job. So what
Yes.
is like the like the roadmap that you laid out for your friend that actually helped him to reach that goal?
Right. So just to give a bit of context, my friend wanted to transition into the tech industry to be a software engineer. So he quit his job and then he started doing this. So we gave him like a very aggressive timeline: 6 months to find his first job, 1 year to find a very good paying job. So that was the timeline, right? And with such a short timeline, you can only do so much in that short timeline. So the most important thing that I've been telling him is that you have to focus on having very strong fundamental. right? Because my advice to him is that when you go to your first job, you are not really expected to start producing business value in like thousands and tens of thousands of dollars every single month immediately, right? Most likely at your first job or even your first internship, your job there is to prove that you have strong fundamentals and you have the ability to learn and grow more, right? So I told him that it's very important that in these first 6 months that you drill the fundamentals, really drill it into yourself and be consistently good at it, right? So the roadmap is very simple. He started on a front-end web development roadmap, which is just learn basic web development using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, learn a web framework, and learn a basic UI framework, right? So learn enough for him to build something, to show that he has the ability to build something, provide business value, and to get things working. But also, I don't want him to learn so much that he becomes spread so thin that every single thing he doesn't have a strong foundation in, right? So that's what he did. And the other thing that I told him is like same with my own self. It's just the ABCs of coding, right? Always be coding. So for the past 6 months, he pretty much coded every single day, 6 days a week. So not really 7 days a week, but close enough. So 6 days a week, every single day. Every single day of coding, at least 4 hours. So we use a software to track his time that he's actually typing on the keyboard. So every single day, at least 4 hours to qualify as a day of coding, right? So it's a very brute force method, but it's a very simple method. It's not easy for sure. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it's a very simple idea. Just code a lot, and then you just do the basics. You build a product that is working, and you can showcase, and then you go and find a job. So at the end of 5 months, 4 or 5 months after he was building like basic projects and stuff, learning, he embarked on building his first so-called big personal project to showcase and to find job with. So the project that he built was a bus app. So the reason was because he hated his own bus app. He thought that it had terrible UI. It was just not very user friendly. So he decided to build his own bus app, and it was really good. So with that bus app, he put it in his resume, his portfolio, and then he just mass send out application emails and things to find job, right? And within 2 to 3 weeks of looking for jobs, he got his offer, and yeah, and then he started working um, at the start of this month, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Right. So to just summarize for those who are interested in like JJ's roadmap for his friend, right? Basically, it is a year's roadmap. So have like a very clear goal and a clear timeline, right? 1 year.
Yep.
So for this friend as well, this friend quit his job. So he literally had a lot of time in his hand to actually learn. So for
Yep.
those who are interested but is still working, then you probably have to extend the timeline by either
Yep.
times 2 or
Yep.
times 1.5, right? So then the second thing is that you say focus on fundamentals, right? Which
Yep.
is to really focus on, being good at the basics, right?
Right.
Which is
Yep.
web development in this case, right? So
Yep.
what do you mean by web development? Which is basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And
Yep.
that's the basics of creating a website. And then once
Yep.
you are able to build the web basics, then you move on to a framework. So people who don't know what a framework is basically an advanced level of creating a website. So we use a framework to build, more interactive websites. And the framework I think that you've proposed is its name is Vue. So VUE. So for those who's interested, you can Google that and see. And then once you have that, then once you learn the framework, then you create an application, right? And the
Right. Right.
application that your friend wants to rebuild or build better was a bus application, right? And then once that bus application has been built, then the next step is to just apply the jobs with the project that he has built. And
Yep.
after a few weeks, he got a job. Is that
Yep.
is that the whole thing? Right.
That's that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like
So
just to like summarize a bit more, I think the main thing that I've been trying to get him to do is that uh think less about the outcome and focus more on the process. So what does that mean? So focus less on like thinking like, oh, how am I gonna get a job? Focus less on thinking how am I gonna build a project, how am I gonna apply to a job or find a job in this so-called saturated job market or whatever, the main thing that I've been drilling him to focus on for the past 6 months is you just need to consistently work on your process, right? And the process being every single day you code for 4 hours straight, right? And the other thing is every single day you code on something that will help you master the fundamentals. And finally, is the project that you do must be something that is not tutorial based, or it must be something that showcase your ability as a developer to build something completely from scratch that you fully own the product, like from start to end. Yeah. So focusing on the process really helps because you just stop thinking about everything else, right? Everything else is irrelevant, right? If you just focus on the process, trust the process, you'll get there. It's like you when you go to the when you want to get big in the gym, you just focus on exercising consistently, focus on eating healthy, focus on sleeping right? So if you just focus on that instead of focusing on like, oh, I want to gain 10 kg of muscle by XYZ, or I want to be able to lift how much weights by XYZ. That is good to have as a goal, but the main thing is always how do you convert it back into a process that you can do consistently, right? So that's my main advice to him, and that's the thing that I honestly feel that helped him get his job lah. Yeah.
Right. So basically, trusting the process and not expecting huge results from what
Yep.
you are doing, right?
Yep.
So I think, yeah, managing your expectations and trusting process actually, I believe as well, and I agree that it will help as well. So do you think as well that guidance from someone like yourself as a senior person actually helped him learn faster and actually learn better?
I think it's the question. I think the answer to that is both yes and no. So definitely, like, so what I did with him was that we had almost a weekly or once every 2 weeks technical review, where basically if he has like any technical question that he can't find the answer on Google, or he just don't understand fully, he can come to me and ask me, all right, and then I'll explain to him. So I would say that these sessions definitely help in a sense because it helps him grasp these like technical things faster. But my main role that helped him in this 6 months, because most of the time he is by himself, he's studying by himself, he's coding by himself. My main role that helped him is just keeping him accountable to the process, right? So yes, I do give him technical advice and stuff, and that does help him go faster. But my main job is just keeping him on track, right? Sometimes, like let's say after you code for a while, let's say after 2 months, you don't see a lot of progress, you feel demotivated, or like you would say like, oh, this framework is so hard. Maybe why do I try another framework, or why do I try another approach, right? So my job is just okay, remind him why he's doing this, keep him on track on the progress, on the process, right? And just getting him to consistently do the process every single day, right? And so how we did it is that we have a group chat, just the two of us. So I say that okay, every single day you have to update your progress here, right? Every single day you update your progress here, what you did, what you plan to do, how does it link to, let's say, your process, right? And by doing this every single day, it keeps him accountable, right? And how do I further keep him accountable is that okay, every single day that you miss this like writing to this group chat to update the status, you owe me $100. Right? It's a very simple and cruel way. It's like okay, like it's a simple punishment method. And the other thing that I try to keep accountable is every time I see him, I go and check on his progress. I look at his GitHub, see whether he has been committing every single day. I look at his code, see whether like the volume of code is enough, right? Like, are you just looking at other people's code? Are you looking at tutorial, reading documentation, but not coding a lot, right? So doing all these things to just make sure that he's held accountable to the process, right? And just that's my main role, honestly. Yeah.
Right. So I guess mostly it is a benefit to have someone who is accountable too, right? Versus
Yes.
someone who actually, self-learn. And I'm not saying, self-learn people are uh, not as good as those who have guidance, right? It's just the
Right.
difference mainly is that you have someone to be accountable to, and most of the time, because your role is to make him be on the road rather than veering off the road of, like, being a
Yep.
developer. So I think, have that focus towards the goal actually helps. And I do agree that, being accountable and as simple as like paying $100 where he probably probably has not a lot of money will actually help to motivate him not to,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that is such a huge thing that for most self learners who want to transition would actually benefit from accountability, right?
Yep.
So maybe have a friend, join the community or whatever that will help, to
Yep.
actually help you transition. So another thing that I want to talk about is like you talk about web development. So what about people who want to, become, for example, blockchain developer? So do you think other like paths are the most, I would say, easiest to become a software developer, or you think like web dev generally should be the start and then maybe you can explore later other tech fields? What's
Right,
your
right.
opinion on that?
So obviously like uh so I mean personally for me, right, I also didn't start from web development. I started with C++ algorithms. So it was a completely different approach when I started out. And I do think that web development is a great starting point. However, I think the main thing is less about what is the best starting point, right? Because we're asking like, okay, what is the best starting point? What is the best thing that I should start with right now? Should I do blockchain? Should I do web development? Should I do mobile app? I think the most important question is what is it that you want out of this career, right? Like if what you want is just okay, what is the fastest and easiest thing that I can learn and master to find a job, then I would say high chance is probably web development, right? But if you say that I want to find a job in fintech, right, then probably something else, right? Or let's say if I want to work in, let's say, high frequency trading, chances are you're probably going to do C++, Rust, or something like that. So it really depends on what's your career goal. For me, at the start, my learning journey was that I didn't care about career, right? I just wanted to code. I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to do the most technically challenging thing. It's also kind of like why people like to play the Rubik's Cube, right? People like to play the Rubik's Cube because it's tough, it's mentally challenging, it's difficult. And I did it for that reason. So that's why I chose a very different path. But if you are not going down that path, obviously it's not ideal to go with something very difficult, right? So I think less about like what is the best career path and more like what is the best for you to start off with. If you are just looking for the simplest thing to start with, I would say that web development is a very attractive option, right? There are also other things like data, so-called data analytics people like that do data visualization and whatever with things like Python and stuff is also a good like starting point. But I think it really depends on what do you want to do in your career and how much time and effort are you willing to invest at the beginning of the career before you even start. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, because I think a lot of people when they think of tech, it's such a huge umbrella, right? And there's so many things in tech that you can actually join. And a lot of people will be asking, oh, where do I start? So that's always a common question. And I do agree that web development, if you don't have any idea of where you want to be in tech field, is the best and easiest way to actually, transition to the tech sector. And a lot of times when people go through web development, they actually explore a little bit more, and sometimes they will become a blockchain developer, a dev ops kind of person, maybe cybersecurity, data analyst, whatsoever. But I think web dev is the easiest to explore a lot more things. And
Right,
I
right.
guess let's end off with one more question. So for those who are thinking to, transition careers, right? Like what do you think is one tip or advice that could really benefit these people who are thinking whether, tech is for them?
Thinking whether tech is for them.
Mm.
I think the question you have to ask yourself is just that are you in it for the long term? Because most tech roles, right? So although like a lot of people hear that oh tech pays well and stuff, yes, tech pays well, but tech usually pays well when you get good at it, right? Like most jobs, you have to be good at it to a certain level before the pay really starts to have a really big jumps, right? So uh, you have to ask yourself how long are you willing to stay in there, or like how much are you willing to be in this career? Because if you are thinking of it just like oh I just study for 6 months or 1 year and then I join and then I get like higher pay than degree holders, and then I can keep that pay for the rest of my career, then that is the wrong mindset because that is very rarely going to happen, almost impossible. But if you go in saying that okay, I'm willing to do this for my entire career, this is my career choice for the rest of my life. I'm willing to do this, and I'm willing to lay down the groundwork to really sacrifice and put in the effort to learn and grow. And I'm okay with not earning as much in my first or second year and just allowing myself to grow more before I earn more. Then I would say yes, that is the career path that you should enter because you're willing to grow in that area lah. Yeah,
Right. So basically, someone who is really like passionate, a little bit obsessed to the tech career or the tech
yeah,
field will benefit the most.
yeah,
Instead of the short term of like just bumping up your salary or earning a lot
yeah,
of salary,
right.
that kind of reason, right? So I
Because
would
like if
say,
you
yeah,
just because you just want to like join for like 6 months and like try it out, I would say that it's just like what we talked about just now, right? Like 6 months, 1 year, even 2 years is too short of a time frame to actually properly evaluate like how good are you, what's your growth level, and to like see whether you can like make so-called a lot of money in this sector. You need a way longer time frame. And if you're not even willing to stay for that long, if you're just saying that, oh, let me just learn for a bit, try it out. I'm not saying that that's bad. Like it's good to like try things out and like to see whether you like it. But I'm saying that you must be at least comfortable with the idea that it takes time to get good at it, right? And if you are very impatient, you're just doing it for the sake of like making more money, but you don't actually like it, you deeply despise it or whatnot, then I would say that not really good on your mental health over the years if you have to do this. Yeah,
right. Yeah, because I guess the biggest filter for tech generally is the learning curve. And the
yep,
learning curve is the one that actually filters a lot of impatient people, I would say. And
yep,
then after that, it's just more towards whether you have perseverance and grit. But I would like to share that my main reason why I go into tech is really mainly for the money. And then later
yep,
on, I, develop a passion out of it. So I think it's okay generally for people to, transition careers because of the money, because people work for money, right? But it's just
right,
that if
right,
you really want to make a lot of money, usually people pay the ones who's very talented, very experienced, and these are the people who are like yourself, mainly obsessed or a little bit obsessed kind of people, right?
right,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much, JJ, for joining this podcast, and for those who are listening, thank you so much. And if you are interested to hear more about this advice and also different tools and resources on how to transition careers, you can just follow us on the Leap podcast. So thank you so much, JJ, and thanks everyone. I hope you see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay,
Thanks for
just
having
end
me,
the
Harris.